Right, I thought I'd do a video, and just come sit down a minute. And this video is in reply to Dr. Dyer's 2-hour video based upon what he calls the shift, and his sort of experience, because I've had a lot of those experiences through my life that he's had, and it's only recently I've been sort of remembering them, and it was before I actually saw the video, so I was quite shocked when I actually saw the video. So a little bit of a story about me. I'm Jeffrey. I was born in '63. I was born in my dad's house in Southmead in Bristol. His name was Richard Harrison. My mum was somebody called Elsie Harrison, obviously because she was married. They couldn't look after me and I was put up for adoption, and a family took me called the Petch family, and I was adopted in 1964. And they noticed I was quite withdrawn. I was very much a person with my own sort of mind, and they used to leave me the first years of my life to much of my own sort of devices. And I remember once I was at the back of this church. They had a church down the road, and I remember I can't be more than about 7. I must have just started school, and it was in the summer because I actually remember it. And I went into the back of the churchyard, and I was at the bottom where the car park was, and I said, if there is a God, I know I'm not here to do what everyone else does. I'm here to be different, and I don't care what other people care about. And I actually remember this, even the flipping weather. I could even take you to the spot. Well, a couple of, I think it might have been a year later, it might have been a couple of months, I don't remember. My parents had the rent of a caravan up in Westwood Ho, or they could get another caravan somewhere else. They knew a couple of teachers from my sister's school that used to rent out caravans. Don't know why they just knew these two teachers. And what they decided to do was go down to Barnstable for a week. And I remember being in this garden, and it had a statue of the patron saint of animals. Well, I can't remember what his name was now, because I didn't know at the time what it was. It wasn't till later. I can't remember who the patron saint of animals is. Obviously a Catholic person might know who it was, because I can't remember the name offhand. And I had this real sort of spiritual experience there, and it's like I was connected to everything and everything was connected to me. It had quite a big effect on me. And I remember going up to my grandmother's house who ran a farm, and it was still there. I just felt, and I felt like that for years, that everything was connected. And after a while, because of problems I had with school, I was put in a specialist school, and I went up to 2 boarding schools. That sort of started to go. It was the pressure of what I was going through. And many years later, this lady approached me in Bristol, came up and spoke to me. I never met her before. And she said, you better look after those hands because God's going to use them. And I said, well, I don't believe in religion. Foxtrot off. And so I wasn't really into that kind of thing. And I then went along to the Billy Graham thing, got interested, but nothing really happened much there. And then I met some neighbours, and something did happen. 1:30 at night, I turned up at their house. I don't know why I was there. And they came down the stairs. They said they knew I was there. How they knew, I don't know. It's pitch blooming dark. And so we spent some time together. We prayed. I became a Christian. And but I still had quite a lot of problems due to what is now called ASPERGERS syndrome, which I didn't know I actually had until later on in my life. And I said, I went up to this hill. It was just at the top here. And I said to God, I don't have the connectivity. I don't understand what's going on in the world. I said, what I need is some kind of spiritual infusion, so I'm able to see what's going on, so I can help others. I said, because I don't know how things work on the spiritual level very well. And because of the damage I had when I was younger, I said, I want it all. And something came back, it was really odd to me really. You want it all, you wouldn't be able to contain it if you did have it all. And I said, well, I don't care, I'll have it anyway. And it was really odd, it was like a charge of electricity. And I could see like all the cosmos and the stars and the baby in the sky that was me. I became the stars and the stars became me. It was really quite odd. And when I came home, it was like all the nerve endings in my body were on the outside. I couldn't touch anything because it was like it was electric. And I went to bed that night and it was like I had a very deep love sort of quantum experience that was that what I thought was wasn't, and what I thought was wasn't. You know, it's really quite odd. It's like everything had been turned upside down. And for 2 years, this lasted about 2 or 3 years, I didn't know what I was on, my head on my backside. And odd sort of things started to happen. And it's only, everybody's noticed it and they've come back and said to me about it. One of them was, we had, when I joined a local church here, they had, the priest had retired. I go to the Church of England, the priest had retired. And these people I knew said they were doing interviews. And I was sat in the choir because I sang in the choir. And all I saw in my head, quite clear, was an older middle-aged lady with curl-type hair, glasses, and that she had some medical issue and she had some relationship issues. And I went up and I said to one of the guys I knew that was on it, interviewing, I said, who have you got? And he said, we've got 3 men that have turned up this week. We haven't got anybody else that's applied. I think we might have one more man that's coming next week. And I said, you have to let them go because they're not the ones. And he said, what do you mean? I said, it's a lady that's coming. She's middle-aged. I explained what happened. And they goes, no. She said, no lady's applied. And apparently there was a lady to apply, but she hadn't made up her mind. And she made her mind at the last minute. And you wouldn't believe it. It was a lady with dark curly hair wearing glasses that had a failed relationship that had some kind of lung disease. And this woman turns up. And I got to know this lady quite well. And there was an experience actually that I had with her. And what she was at the back like they do. I call it washing a baby, baptisms, but washing a baby. And something came to me, it was really quite odd. And it was, I don't want to give it back, the baby back to the parents. It's too late for me. And I got home, I was very upset about it. I went up to see a friend of mine about it and I spoke to him. And he goes, Jeff, he said, she's never said anything like it to us. And we know her quite well because we're part of the leadership team. Are you sure? And he said, look, if anything happens like that again, will you let me know? I said, well, okay, all right. And this guy came up to me about a couple of weeks later. And he said, Jeff, he said, I'm going to pray for a woman in London who's dying of cancer. I met this couple, they're very poor, then became very rich out of nowhere. And they've done all they can for this lady. I'm quite worried. I'm going to go up and see her. Will you think of me? And I said something really odd. I don't know why I said it. I said, I'll pop in and join you. I'll come and see you. This was in London. I'm in Shepton Mallet. And I'm on the way to work. And all I see in my head, it's like I could see where I was going. And I could see this other place. And it was a garden. I'll explain what it was. This lady was sat around this table, and it's one of these wooden tables with the slats on, with the hole in for an umbrella. But the umbrella wasn't there, it was propped up against the wall, where the back door was. And she wasn't dressed, she was wearing a pink nightgown, like my mum used to wear. And Lawrence and her were sat around the table having a chat. Obviously I couldn't hear, but I could see. And what happened, he put his hands forward and touched hers. And the sleeve went up and I saw his watch and the time on the watch. And when I looked behind, I noticed there were, behind him in the garden there was an archway. And on that was these blue, tight, purple honeysuckles. Now I'm allergic to wasps and stinging things, so I tend to avoid flowers. And I thought, okay, And I walked into work, didn't think too much of it, and I went to see him the following week. And he goes, yeah, I said to him, how'd you get on with the lady? And he looked at me, well, I did what I could. I said, okay. I said, well, you didn't trust me. He said, what do you mean? I said, and I told him what I just said on the video. I said, well, you looked at your watch. He said, what do you mean? I said, the one you always wear with a fish on it. And I explained what it looked like and exactly what had happened. And he said, could you tell me the time on the watch I did? The guy went white. And there was a very similar thing happened with a historical event in the town. It was about 200 years ago. I was telling one of my, John Warmer, that was the priest here at the time in Shepton, about this. He said, it's got bad atmosphere. Nothing ever happens here. I've been here 20 years and I've just been flogging a dead horse. And I said, well, if you don't deal with the past, then the fallout is still here and you had to deal with that. And I said there was a number of child murders here because there were women forcibly sexualised. And I won't be able to say the whole thing on here because it would take hours to do it. I said these children were done in and then buried along with babies that had already died. And he looked at me and thought I was mad. And about 5 years went, and he decided to call a prayer meeting, have a video in his study, and it was called the Transformations video. And I saw this video and something came to me, you're going to have to approach John again. And I thought, well, I didn't know what to do. So I thought, I'll run it and do a tape. And then I'll write it down if I'm happy with it. What I normally do is I record a tape and then I play it again and type out what I wanted. I didn't get to typing it because something came to me. Don't play it back, you'll change it. It won't be any good, just put it in the door. It's really quite clear. So I put it into a brown envelope and stuck it through the door. There was a prayer meeting on the Wednesday. This was on the Monday. And I went into his study and I saw a tape machine on a wooden chair with my tape in it. And I thought, well, at least it's not in a waste paper basket. In fact, that was the first place I looked. I thought, I wonder if it's in the... And then it wasn't. I saw it in the tape. And he said to everyone, hello, come and sit down. He said, I'm not going to play the video tonight. He said, I've come into some information by a church member. I have checked it out. He said, I've ignored this for 5 years or more and it's been right all along and I need you to hear it. So I had to listen to my voice for 40 minutes, both sides of a C90. I was very, very embarrassed by it. And apparently it wasn't 10%, 50%. Apparently he said it was all right. He didn't know how I knew and what happened. And I said, I just see it in my head. And I said, no, that's what happens. And he said, there was a place you said that we had to find. We can't find it. I said, trust me, it's there. It's a burial ground. And I told him where it was, but there wasn't anything there. I suppose it's 8 or 9 years later, probably a bit more. I was walking up to look after some children I look after. And something came to me. The place has been found. And I think it was on the Monday the following week. I met a chap I knew that lived in that particular vicinity who had a dog. He said, Jeff, he said, I've been thinking of coming and seeing you. You wouldn't believe what I found and what I've experienced. I said, I'll tell you. He never told me anything. He said, how do you know when I haven't told you? I said, I knew Friday. And I told him what had happened. He said, isn't that odd? And I said, do you know part of that building is in your house? Some of the materials used to build your kitchen's in that house. If you lift up the carpet, it's in the corner, and it was. And that's the kind of things that have been happening. And the other odd thing that happened is that I'd actually, years ago, I had a lady friend who had 2 children. And well, she had 3, but one had left home. And her young lad, who was I call a young man almost, he was about 13. I hadn't seen him for about 17, 18 years. He was in it, and all I saw in my head was him and this lady knocked my door. And what it was, she had a shawl wrapped up and there was a baby in there. And she had this sort of hair with the highlights. You know, the women do the stripy hair like a tiger. And he said, I got something I want to show you. And he handed me his parcel and there's a baby in it. I love babies, my mum fosters. I'm making a fuss of this baby. But a year later, I went to walk across the park. I hadn't done it for years. I had no reason to go there. And all I heard was, Jeff, is that you? And it was John with a beard. And 29 with a beard. I hadn't seen him since he was 14. And I spoke to him and I said, I had a dream about you while I was awake. That you had a baby. It was about 3 years ago. He goes, oh yes, she's 3. There's no way I could have known that. I haven't seen him for nearly 20 years. And he gave me his Facebook page, how to find it. And there's the woman with the highlights that's shorter than him. So this is the kind of thing that's going on. And it's really odd because over the last couple of years I found a lot of things on the internet. People on the autism spectrum, they seem to be experiencing the same thing. And I've been at my doctor again because I was suffering depression again, which I tend to get a lot of problems with. And he said, well, why don't you go and see the mental health team? So I went to see the mental health team. It was up in Wells. I live in Shepton Mallet. This is in Wells. It's about 6 miles away from here. And I met this lady. And she said, yes, you've got Asperger's syndrome. She said, I don't need to even take you to be tested. It's obvious. Because I see people, and if they're classic case, they see professor. If they're not, I just went to the doctor. And I'm like, okay. For an adult, I go, okay. She said, I want you to see their team. And I said, all right. Because she said, I think they should listen to what you had to say. She said, I think you've got some things they need to hear. So this lady had come all the way from another town, and she started talking to me about various things that I was going through. And she said to me, it's a kind of spiritual, it's kind of metaphysical type of quantum side to this. I said, oh yes. I said, when someone's going to die, someone's going to born, very often at world events, that there's something outside ourselves. And I started to tell her what I just said, about Lawrence and about a couple of other people I spoke to. And she said, that's funny. She said, that's what the others have told me. I said, what others? She said, the ones you haven't seen. And it's really odd. I'll go into a shop. I went into a shop, it was last year. And I saw this boy about 14 and mum. And I said hello to the boy, hello. And her mum said, oh, hello. And I said, he's like me, he's on the spectrum. She goes, yes, he has. And you know what I said to her? How's the bowels? She said, that's funny, how'd you know about that? He's still wearing adult nappies, he looks like a sieve. There's no way I could have flipping known that. And there was a girl sat on a rocking horse. I said, well, that's your daughter over there. She's a reflector, she don't talk. And your husband's over there messing around with the books. I'd never seen this family before, and by the way, it was right. Some while before that, I had a very similar experience. I'd gone into a bank, and I said to this lady, I said, but being on an ASPE, I'm clumsy, so I put things down. So if I don't put this money in the bank, I'm going to put it down, and I won't remember. I've lost money, keys, cards, I lose everything. It ends up in the waste paper basket generally. And she said, that's funny, my son's got that. And all I saw in my head was this young lad in his mum's front room, and he went to the corner, put his head down and his hands down, and his feet were up and his head was down. And I said to her, don't worry about the download. And she said, what do you mean? Well, he runs to the corner, puts his head down, his feet up on the wallpaper. Next minute, he's running around like he's been charged up. And she said, how the flipping hell do you know that? You've walked in here, I've never seen you before. And apparently this is quite a lot of people are experiencing this. And one of them was September the 11th, a couple of years before that. I had this, I keep saying it's real, but my friends say it can't be, because I've gone to approach them. I said, do you remember we went to see an evangelist in this building? There was no windows in. We went on a coach trip. And I spoke to all these people, and they goes, no. I said, yeah. He said, and I told them where they were sat and everything, and they deny it. And this guy said there was going to be a financial crisis that would lead to instability. There would be some terrorist attack within the next 2 years. And they goes, no, we don't remember anything. And apparently I'm the only one that remembers out of a coach load of people, and none of them said they ever went anywhere. And so whatever happens, I don't know. And the other time is when my brother-in-law had taken me picking berries, and he said I was there, and all I saw in my head was this lady. She must have been probably in her 50s, maybe getting on nearly 60. And she looked quite unhappy, and it was a regular place she used to walk. Now, I didn't know this, by the way. Never been to this place before. And I said to my brother-in-law, I said, there was an elderly lady who used to hang around here. She didn't look very happy, and she died here. He goes, run that past me again. I said, an elderly lady who suffered depression died here. He goes, yes, I knew her. She committed suicide in that lake over the hill. I'd never been there. I didn't even know there was a lake even over there. I didn't know there was anything there. And there's things like family things. I won't exactly say what they are. But I've said something about something, and someone said, how did you know? Because there's no way I could have known. And this is the sort of thing that's been going on. I call it experiences of the quantum. Some people in America used to do this spying. They call remote view, and I call it quantum visualization. Because everything that happens leaves a trace. And I'm going to get into that later on. Actually, what I found out about that would be very interesting to say that, because I'm really into quantum side of things. And so I got a friend who's our vicar now. He used to be a professor. He was a science professor. He was an under professor at the university. And we spent ages talking about physics, and we really struck up an accord, and it was funny. He invited me to his house for lunch, and I had something on my mind that week, and it was the story of the talents. There was a story in the Bible about a rich man who gave his servants a talent each, which is it's a certain amount of money. It's like I suppose like you could call a gold bar or something like that. And he said, I'll come back and see how well you've done. And there were three servants. One had invested it and made 7 talents. One had done something else with it and made 2. The other one buried it in the ground, didn't do anything with it out of fear, because he feared that his boss was a hard man that gained not through his own effort, and he was afraid of him. So he was too frightened to move. Very interesting story. And I was in the kitchen and I thought to myself, well, look, I'm no good with money, so I would invest it and see my master, and said, I know I'm no good with money, and I didn't want to squander it. So what I've done is I've invested it so that you get interest plus something back. Would that be okay? It was ever so odd. I went to this meal, and I was told it was a church meal and other people were coming. But when I went there was one couple and me. And he said, most people want to know what this meal is about. He said, actually, it's for Jeff. And I thought, well, why is it for me? I haven't done anything. And he was saying he takes the gospel and he serves people. And he doesn't mind doing things. The other thing, when he prays, it's prophetic. Things happen, what he says, and sometimes I don't know where it comes from. He said, how the hell does he know that? And I mean, it just happens to me. I don't know how I know. It just comes and it just happens. And when I was home in the car, I just said about the talents thing. And another thing was on my mind in the week, actually. It had actually been on his. And I said in the car, I said, nothing really in this country is going to grow on a spiritual level until the people that experience the war, because of what happened in the Second World War, and the people that were children through the war, because of the suffering that happened in the war. And he said, that's funny. I was thinking the same. And this is the kind of thing I call it quantum synchronicity, spiritual synchronicity, the Holy Spirit. You can call it whatever you feel fits. And maybe that's true. And a number of people, I mean, he thought of that. I mean, I don't know. And there's been various things happen where I've been upset about something. I've seen a film about something because I saw something in my head. One of them was about a lady that was really going through it and her son. And what had happened, that her 11-year-old daughter had died. And all I saw was a dead kid in a box. She hadn't said anything, by the way. 10 minutes later, it really was a dead kid in a box. So I think, and that's not the only time it's happened. It happened. Somebody told me about this lady that was very bitter, very angry. And I just saw the same thing, dead kid in a box. Guess what? Dead kid in a box, died of cancer. There you are. Same age as the other one, 11. So that's what happens sometimes with the shift, the quantum, what I call the spiritual download. These things tend to happen. They've happened all my life. I don't understand why they're happening, and I don't really know what the impact of it all is. But maybe some other people have experienced this and do know more than me. Maybe there's more people experiencing this kind of thing. But I'm going to upload this, and maybe some people might laugh at it, but that's all right. I don't mind. Whatever, while you're laughing at me, you're not giving someone else a hard time. Anyway, I'll leave it here, and I hope this is useful to other people going through the same experience. So I'm going to call this the shift, the quantum experience. And this is not aimed at religion or any particular religion. I've experienced it as a Christian, but I've also experienced this before I was. But it's actually gathered more of a momentum since I have been. So I'm not forcing people to believe what I do. I'm just explaining what's happened. And because people do go through this experience, and it may be related to all kinds of things that happen in people's lives. So we'll leave it here. Goodbye, and I hope you get something from this video, or as I call it, video.